So much of squash, just an analogy for the world in general. Like, how can you pull yourself together to get what you want? So my first job out of college was that I coached part-time at Tufts for 2 years. I was the assistant of the men and women. My second year I was like the acting women's coach, whatever that means. I think a lot of it is very similar to what I would say for coaching a women's team. But I think for me, I would go into coaching a new men's team knowing that they probably didn't know me and that there was a lot of like trust that had to be built. This happened everywhere that I coached. For the men's team, it was about showing them that I could really offer them something that was meaningful and that I cared enough to put in that time to do that with them. And so I had to really be patient and show that I cared a lot about them. So you're like building trust and you're being consistent. I'm going to do whatever I can to like help you become the best player that you can be. So now I work in a school in Philadelphia that is contracted with the school district of Philadelphia. So we take students who have disengaged from the school district at some point, and then they want to come back and get their high school diploma. So our students are 16 to 21. We're in North Philadelphia, and we have 100 students, and I'm the only full-time counselor there, although I do have interns who help me out, which is awesome, and other programs that we work with. But I am really like the go-to person who is on staff for them. I am a counselor, and I'm no longer a squash coach. And so usually I say, actually what I say is that I'm a therapist, because people do not always know what the term counselor means. And they'll be like, are you a guidance counselor? Are you helping people get into college? And that's not really what I do. So I usually say therapist, even though my professional and legal term is counselor. So yeah, I'll keep it general. So we have changed his name to Michael. That's not his original name. And so he's a young man at our school. He joined about a year and a half ago in July. And he came to my office one day because he was wondering if he was going to get kicked out of school if he was hospitalized. And he was very shy and sort of not totally willing to talk about things. But again, I mean, just to go back to how you deal with like a men's team when you're a woman, and I would say the same thing for a woman's team when you're a woman or a man, like just showing someone that you care about them, like genuinely care about them, and that you care about their story and want to help them was meaningful for him. And so he had been in a behavioral unit before. He was afraid that he just struggles with suicidal thoughts and severe depression and anxiety, mostly depression. And so we started to talk about what that was like for him. And we used to actually still keep a log of how he's doing every day, you know, how his mood is, how he's been sleeping, and how his energy level is. And we talk about the things that help him. And he was able to not go back to the hospital, which was great, because, I mean, it's a good place to be if that's where you need to be, but it's not where he wants to be, and he wants to be in school. And so over the course of those 6 months, every time he was in school, which was, you know, usually like 3 or 4 times a week, attendance was a struggle for him when he was feeling low, but, you know, he'd be in school 3 or 4 times a week, and he was always waiting at my door to talk at lunch because he didn't want to miss class, which is amazing. And we talked every day that he was there. And he eventually, after about 6 months, he was very quiet, and he would tell me, I don't like to talk about things, but he was still there, which told me that he was getting something out of it. We believe that all behavior is purposeful. And so him showing up meant something to me. And after about 6 months, he was able to say, you know, well, I have a speech impediment that has really like changed my life. And I had never noticed it before because he was very careful about what words he would say. It wasn't a stutter. It was just that there are certain sounds that he has trouble making. And he is so meticulous that he doesn't use words that he can't say. So I had never noticed. And hearing that he had never really told anyone before was amazing for both of us. I think for him to be able to like offload that to someone. And also it was like kind of a source of his depression and his shyness because he was embarrassed on a day-to-day basis. He had to always thinking about what he could and couldn't say and where he could go. And he was upset with family members for not kind of like helping him navigate it and maybe getting him more support. And his mother is wonderful, and I've spoken to her a lot too. And she sort of told me like the insurance ran out and we couldn't get speech therapy anymore. But this year he has been able to, well, I got in contact with CHOP, like the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and they were so amazing about helping him get an evaluation. And so his insurance is actually going to cover it, even though he is not technically a child anymore. And he's going to potentially get speech therapy again, which I hope is helpful. And I want to say he's a success story because he is reaching out when he needs help and he is like advocating for himself. But I will say like the pandemic has been really hard on him and he is not attending school the way that he used to. And it's like a struggle every day to make sure that he has what he needs. I mean, he's someone that I don't check in every day with many students. As you can imagine, that would be almost impossible. But he is one of the kids that I do check in with every day. And it's just like a work in progress. You know, I think it's like maybe more realistic than a success story. Is like we've had successes and then like we've had the pandemic, which has really set us back. And we are trying to navigate it and being flexible and working on it and trying to make the best of it. And that's sort of where we are. And I think that's the way it is for a lot of our students, just like being pummeled by life and the complications that come with poverty. And I would say that like poverty in general can be traumatic in ways that like a lot of us in the squash community just don't understand. I even think I call on my like coaching career sometimes to like, or even like playing, you know, there's like different parts of yourself that you can inhabit. And there were times when I was coaching that people would be rude to me and I would be like, it's my job to like model how to be mature in the situation and handle it well. And I think that the skill that I learned from that carries over is that like so much of what goes on is not personal to me. It's hard to go in every day and often hear the worst parts of people's lives and not always be able to help in the way that you want to help, even though sometimes all that people need is for someone to hear them and believe them, because I think that goes way farther than we acknowledge. So much of squash, just an analogy for the world in general. Like, how can you pull yourself together to get what you want and what's important out of your experience and not let the things you can't control, whether it's an opponent who's being obnoxious or like a barrier that you're not in control of, like how can you transcend that and get over it?